Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. With the lockdown still continuing, solo games are becoming even more important than they've ever been before, and The Lost Expedition is a pretty good game that you can play solo. I have done a playthrough for this game on my channel in the past where I go through the rules in some depth, but we're going to give it another go today. The premise is I am on an expedition in the jungle. My expedition comprises 3 people, Bessie, Roy and Isabel, and they each have their own area of expertise. We are represented by the yellow meeple at the top of the screen that has to traverse 9 cards to get to the lost city. Each round of the game is broken into a morning phase and an evening phase, which has slightly different rules, and we're going to start in the morning phase. I'm going to try not to make too many mistakes as we go through this. I will cover rules as we go so that we can get straight into it. For now, I have to start by creating a path of 6 cards to represent the journey that I take on the morning. First of all, I have to draw 2 cards from the deck. And I have drawn 2 things that I will not be able to pronounce very well. And this could very well be the first card we will encounter, because during the morning phase, you will encounter the cards in numerical order. I now need to pick 2 cards from my hand of 6 that I think will be beneficial. I'm going to play Footprints and Vantage Point. I now draw a 3rd card from the deck and play a final card from my hand. With the path created, we encounter the cards one at a time from lowest to highest value. And here we can see there are 3 red boxes. Now, when it comes to the red boxes, you only have to pick one of them, and you have to do everything in it. We could spend one of our bullets to gain some camping expertise and swap 2 cards in the path. We could spend 2 health to advance our expedition 1 space along the expedition track, or we could outright kill one of our explorers. I do not wish to kill an explorer at this stage. I don't really want to take the health damage, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 damage to get my expedition off to a running start. So first we lose the 2 life points. We will lose 1 from Roy and 1 from Isabel. And then we advance our meeple. Next up, we encounter some footprints. We can either skip the next card in line in order to advance our meeple 1 space along the expedition, or we can gain 3 food. I know that coming up we have some cards that could be potentially dangerous to us and could cost us food, so I'm going to gain the food. And that's 3 more food tokens in the bank. Next up, we're meeting some of the locals. We can either give them some food in order to gain some expertise in camping. We can fire off our guns in order to swap 2 cards that are in the track. Or we can lose 2 health. I don't want to lose any more health at this stage, and I purposely acquired that food earlier on so that we could spend some now, because I'm going to give up 1 food in order to keep this card, and then later on, if at any point I need to spend some expertise in camping, I can use this card as that particular resource. So this will go into a stash for later use. Next up, some more locals. We can either spend some health in order to gain some expertise in navigation. We can spend some food to advance our meeple. We can fire off a round in order to skip the next 2 cards, but I definitely don't want to do that because I want to make use of these cards. Or again, we could suffer the loss of one of our party. I am going to spend the other 2 food that we acquired in order to advance our meeple. So we take 2 food, and we advance the meeple. We're off to a pretty fast start, but we're not accumulating much in the way of resources at the moment. I need to be careful of that. I need to balance how quickly I advance against what resources I'm going to need. Next up, while taking a dip in the river, we've encountered some electric eels. The yellow box at the top we have to do, we have no choice in that matter, and it adds a card from the top of the deck to the end of our current path. And I've drawn a deserted outpost, which will in turn extend this pathway again. But that goes at the end. Next up we have a blue box, and with the blue boxes you can choose to do as many of them as you want to do, and you can ignore them if you want to. In this case I would take 1 damage in order to gain 2 food. I do think I might need some food, however I think I'm going to have opportunities later on to get food from the vantage point on the next card. It's a tough call, but I've already taken damage, so I'm going to ignore this blue box for now. I may live to regret it, but there we go. Next up we have our vantage point, and unfortunately this is going to cost us some health. Another reason why I didn't want to lose that health on the electric eel. But then we will have the option of swapping cards in the path, which we can't do because there are no other cards to swap the last card with, but we will then also gain some expertise in jungle knowledge, and then we will have an opportunity to shoot something in order to acquire some food. So I think we're going to do all of that. So first of all I will take this life point from Bessie, the reason being she still has 3 while the others only have 2. And then I will keep this vantage point card for this jungle expertise here. I'm then going to fire off one of my bullets in order to acquire an additional food. Next we encounter a deserted outpost, and again we have to draw a card from the top of the deck and add it to our path. We have drawn the progress card. Next we have a choice. We can either gain 2 bullets, or we can heal one of our explorers by 1 life point and take a camping resource. They are both very good options. In this case I am going to take the life. So Isabel is going to regain a life point. The reason being, I have some resource cards now that match the skill set of Bessie and Roy. However, I don't have any resource cards that match Isabel's navigation skill. So there's a slightly increased risk that I might have to draw on her health pool later on. And of course, this card will go into our stash for that camping resource. Finally, we have to deal with our progress card, and we've got lots of good options here. We could spend navigation expertise to advance our meeple or gain some food, or spend some jungle experience to gain some food, or just gain a health point for one of our characters, and we know that we could make use of that because we've taken a little bit of a battering getting to this point. Now, I think I'm going to play it a little bit risky, and I'm going to advance the meeple. That does mean, unfortunately, that I would need to spend navigation expertise, which I do not currently have. I only have jungle and camping, so taking this option will cost Isabel a life point, but it will advance the meeple again, and from experience I know that it's a good idea to keep that meeple going. So Isabel will lose that life point she just gained, and our meeple advances. Not a bad morning's jaunt. As the morning draws to a close, we take a break and eat some of our rations, so we lose a rations token. We then flip our token to the evening side, and we have to create another path of 6 cards, and this will work slightly differently. To begin with, we will take 1 card from our hand and place it to start the path. From then on, we can either play cards from our hand or draw cards from the deck until we have played all the cards from our hand and drawn 3 cards from the deck. Whenever we're playing a card, we have to place it before or after the cards that are already in play. So you have to think very carefully about how the symbols are going to interact with each other. I'm going to start by playing Healing Herbs. This is a good card that could generate some health that we do need. Next, I'm going to draw a card from the deck. And this is a very bad card. I have drawn Ambush. The good news is I can place Ambush right after Healing Herbs, because Healing Herbs enables me to skip the next card in the path. So I can ignore this Ambush card later on. I'm now going to draw a second card from the deck. I have drawn the Ruins. And there's some interesting stuff going on here. It will enable me to remove cards from the path, and Looks like I can spend some resources to advance the meeple. I'm going to put that after the ambush. I'm going to draw a third and final card from the deck. And I have found the clearing. This is a really good card. Very helpful. And I'm going to place it at the front. Because I've drawn 3 cards from the deck, I cannot draw any more cards from the deck. I have to play the 2 cards I have in my hand. Both the cards I have in my hand are bad cards. Spoiled supplies will cost me resources, some food, and dehydration will either add cards to the path or will cost me my camping resources. So I'm going to place both of those at the end of the path because we can remove them thanks to the ability at the ruins. So this is what our path looks like going into the evening. The first card in the path is the clearing, and the clearing is a great card because it has 2 boxes on it and they're both blue. With blue boxes, you can ignore them or you can take the actions. It's up to you. And if there are multiple boxes that are blue, you can do them all. Now, both of these boxes require spending camping expertise, and I do have 2 camping expertise, but I don't really want to use them both at this stage. If you don't want to spend expertise, you can spend health off of your explorers. You can either spend 1 health off of the explorer that actually has that particular expertise, or 2 health off of a different explorer. Obviously, that's not worth doing if you're only going to regain 1 health. But I do want some extra food, so I'm going to spend 1 of my camping resources to gain 2 food. We discard the resource from my stash, and we add 2 food tokens. Next up, we have the Healing Herbs card. First of all, we have to do the yellow box, which means we will be skipping the next card in the path. That means this ambush can be ignored. We then have the option of spending some jungle expertise to gain 2 health. However, we will have to add 1 card to the end of the path, which does somewhat ruin my plan of ignoring these 2 cards. But for the 2 health, it's going to be well worth it, so I will be discarding another resource from my stash to gain 2 health tokens. So our vantage point is gone, and I am going to add both of my health tokens to Isabel. Although the explorers start with 3 health, they can go up to 4, but 4 is the cap. Finally, we had to draw a card from the top of the deck, and we have drawn the Kapok. This will get added to the end of the path. Next up, we are stopping at the ruins, and first of all, we have to deal with this yellow box. We have to discard 1 food, but then we get to remove the last 2 cards from the path. So we take a food token, and these 2 cards are removed. Next, we have 2 blue boxes, and remember, we can choose to do 1, both, or neither. Both of them will grant us extra steps on the path, and that's really going to get us closer to winning the game, but it's going to cost us a lot of resources to do it. Do I want to do it is the big question. It's going to cost me a food and a camping resource to advance once, and it would cost me a health and a navigation resource to move again. And I don't actually have any navigation resources, so I would have to use health from one of my explorers. Is it worth it for 2 steps on the path? I think it possibly is. So I'm going to do it. First of all, we're going to advance a space by spending 1 health and spending a 2nd health in place of navigation. Now, obviously, I can't take 2 health off of Bessie or Roy, who do not specialise in navigation, but Isabel has been stacked up with health, so I'm going to take both of the health tokens from her. And that will move me once. For the second move, it's going to cost me 1 food and 1 camping. I do have a camping resource. And we take another food. And that will advance me again. Unfortunately, there is still 1 more card in the path because extra cards got added, so I do have to deal with this final card. Spoiled supplies is a very simple thing. It costs you a food. Nothing I can do about that. So another food token vanishes. However, that does bring us to the end of the evening. Once again, we sit down to enjoy some rations together, and I have to spend another ration token. And we flip the token back to the morning side. As dawn breaks, I fill my hand with 6 new cards, and then we have to start building our pathway again. So first of all, we will take 2 cards from the top of the deck. We have drawn a very useful card that can give us some navigation, help us skip cards, and gain us some food. And our second card is also incredibly good. It will gain us some food. It will cost us some health if we choose it, but we can actually avoid some cards. So we have to think carefully about this. So we're going to start with this card, going right at the beginning of the path. And I've been looking at this ants card, and it's going to cause me to jump over the pig, unless I either dodge the ants or put some cards between the ants and the pig. So this is a very dangerous play, and it may not work out in my favour, but I've got a steep path here, which will cost me some health to traverse, but it will advance my meeple and it will enable me to jump over a card. So I'm going to drop this before the ants and kind of hope that we can dodge the ants, because I do want to get that pig. I now have to draw another card from the deck, and it's a really good card, but unfortunately it's going to go immediately next to our pig, and the pig will cause me to jump straight over that. That is annoying. I now need to play a final card from my hand, and unfortunately I do not have a 41.5 to play. But what I do have is a rope bridge, and that's another card that can advance my meeple. So the first card in our path gives us a choice. I am low on food. I only have 1 food token, but this card can be taken to be used as either one of these resources, and that I think is going to be more beneficial in the long run, as I should get some food from the pig. Moving swiftly on, we are going up the steep path, and I do want to dodge those ants because I do want to get that pig. So it's going to cost me 2 health, but it will get me to move my meeple as well, and that's a good thing. Again, living dangerously, living on the edge, I'm going to take the first option, so it's going to cost me 2 health, but I will get to avoid the ants and advance my meeple. As I have a resource that can be used for jungle knowledge or navigation, I am going to take the health from Roy and Isabella. I then remove the ants card and advance the meeple. So next we encounter our pig. First of all, we get to keep this card as a navigation resource, but we must skip the next card in the path. That's really unfortunate because I could have used that card to advance my meeple. When it comes to additional choices, I am going to shoot the pig to gain 2 food. So we keep the resource card, add 2 food, and remove this card from the path. Finally, we are at the rickety rope bridge. Because this is the last card in the path, we can ignore the yellow box, which is to swap 2 cards around. And now we have a choice. We don't want to add a card to the path, obviously. We want to advance our meeple. And the best way to do that, we don't want to kill an explorer, so we are going to use our navigation resource. We can use either of our cards for this navigation resource, but it makes sense to use the card that only can be used for navigation rather than the card that has the additional flexibility. We discard our pig, easy come, easy go, and we advance our meeple. We have only 1 space to go. Unfortunately, that's the end of our morning journey, so we have to sit down and eat some more rations. and then we flip the counter to the evening side. And at this point, I can pretty much fudge the game to ensure that I win, because I have a card in my hand that will advance my meeple, and once that meeple reaches the 9th space, the game immediately ends in a win for me. So I'm going to play that card down now, and then any other cards that I play, I will play after it, and because we are in the evening phase, I don't care what's going to come after, because the first card I encounter will generate a win for me. So I'm going to place this Rapids card down, and then I may as well draw 3 cards from the deck, placing them all after. The first card is an Anaconda, Jennifer Lopez and Ice Cube, better watch out. Our second card is Pounding Rain, not a good card. Our third card is Fever, again not a good card. I am glad that I'm probably not going to have to deal with any of these. Finally, I'm going to play the 2 cards from my hand. I have Thick Fog, and I have Infected Wound. As you can see, a lot of bad cards coming up in this particular phase of the exploration. I'm very glad that I've been advancing my meeple as quickly as possible. And did I remember to remove the bullet when I shot that pig? I can't remember. It doesn't make a difference anyway. If I forgot to remove it, pretend I did. Because we're going to deal with this Rapids card, and we can see that we can spend 1 food and 1 navigation to advance our meeple 1 space. So that is exactly what we are going to do. We take the food token, we take the resource, and we advance our meeple to the final space. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a win. We have made it to the temple with a single ration left, and we're all in a bad state. We're all beat up. I don't think any of us are going to survive the return journey. We will be a lost expedition regardless. But at least we got to bask in this moment of glory in the lost city. We found it. We made it. We are winners. And that is it from me and this playthrough of The Lost Expedition. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have made it to the end of the video, I really do appreciate it. Please consider leaving comments. Remember, if you like the video, please consider pressing that like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon.